when you first join the United States Army, there's a good chance that you're pretty new to the life, right? You just got done graduating high school. You've been living with mom and dad for, all of your life. And now you got this newfound freedom in the Army, in the military. And with that new freedom, because you haven't experienced true life yet, you're probably going a little wild, probably doing some things and making some mistakes. And I want to try to kind of maybe educate you on some of those common things that, people make as far as mistakes. Now, you probably will still make some of these mistakes, right? But maybe there'll be more of a watered down version of that mistake, because it's a different life, right? When you're in high school, now you're in the Army, and you're free. And there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of cool things to do. And sometimes you go a little too wild and make some mistakes. So I got some mistakes I'm gonna tell you about, some things to avoid doing in the Army, so that way you can be knowledgeable about that and maybe try to avoid doing it altogether, or maybe you just create a watered down version of that mistake. The first one is probably a pretty common one you'll hear soldiers make the mistake of doing. You'll hear it from your leadership, from fellow soldiers when you get to your unit, and it's even a joke that a lot of people make, and that's getting into a high interest rate on a car. Because maybe you're someone who doesn't have your own vehicle already, right? You get to your first duty station, maybe you try to tough it out for a little while, and you kind of start realizing, hey, I can't go to all the cool places I want to go to. I can't do all the cool things I want to do because I'm constantly having to rely on somebody else to catch a ride from them or whatever, and you want to get your own vehicle. And especially when you're in that situation where you're just coming from high school, you probably haven't built up any credit yet. There's a good chance of that, right? And so if you go try to get a vehicle, you don't have any credit yet. You don't have any kind of history, so you probably have a really low credit score, and that's going to possibly result in a really high interest rate. So now you have to do a little bit of better planning, right? Maybe you don't rush into buying a car right away. You save up some money. Maybe you just have to settle with buying some piece of junk kind of car for a little while that maybe you were able to save up to afford. And then maybe it's just a small interest rate, or a small loan that has not too bad of interest rate because it wasn't very big of a loan in the first place. There's a whole bunch of scenarios, but that's one of the things you got to watch out for, because a lot of times leadership may even recommend that you take a squad leader with you. You go with some leadership, so that way you don't get taken advantage of, because sometimes in certain areas there might be these dealerships that may be trying to take advantage of you. Maybe not, but nonetheless, there are times where they're trying to take advantage of you and charging you a lot. Maybe they're trying to go and give you their, loan that they have through the dealership, so that way they can take advantage of the high interest rate. I don't know, but that's a pretty common one. I was a victim of that. I think I got into like a 16% interest rate, I think, when I bought my very first car, in the Army, because I got tired of bumming rides and stuff like that. I only kept that car for, I think, about a year before I moved on and got something else that had a lower interest rate, because now I built up some credit from making my payments on time. There's a lot of things. Maybe sometimes you can find out if there's some financial classes you can take, or maybe just get some advice from soldiers that, have been around the block for a little while, and they can give you some pointers to hopefully, not get trapped into some high interest rate and still get some wheels if you want to. The next one is dating a stripper. Now, there's a reason why I have the dating in quotation marks, because there is a difference between dating a stripper and dating a stripper. Because I'm not necessarily saying that, someone that chooses that profession is a bad person, you should avoid them, but there is a difference between dating a stripper and dating a stripper. So let me kind of dive deeper into that, so hopefully you understand. You'll see these soldiers that are like this, where if you want to go to strip club, cool, right? Be responsible, whatever type of thing, but you got to understand that that's their profession. Their profession is to try to make you feel wanted. So that way you'll keep coming back, you'll spend money on them, and they can make money in return. No knock on them, that's the job, that's what they're supposed to do, right? And sometimes, maybe some soldiers are really lonely, they're, again, not used to this lifestyle, of being away from mom and dad and away from high school, and now, cool, this really good looking female is paying attention to me, that looks really great looking, she's my girlfriend now. Well, if you don't go on actual dates, you're not, hanging out outside of the strip club, then that's where I bring in the dating a stripper kind of a thing. Because I've seen soldiers like that, where, they say that, oh yeah, I'm dating so-and-so, she works at this strip club here, and you kind of dive a little bit more into it, and you find out that, oh, the only time you've spent time with that individual is at that strip club, having drinks, talking there and stuff like that. You've never actually gone off and spent time with them and gone on dates and just hung out, and maybe you just watch some TV together and have dinner together. All of your time is being spent at that location. So that's where dating a stripper is different from dating a stripper. Because if you don't mind, right, that's their profession, you don't mind that, that's what they do for a living, is take off their clothes for, random people, and they're doing lap dances and all that stuff like that, then, fine. I'm not saying that strippers are necessarily bad. I mean, sure, there are bad ones, but there's bad regular people too. But, if you're not actually dating them because the only time you're seeing them is at that strip club, then you're in that category of where you're dating a stripper, you're not really dating a stripper. So you got to watch out for that. Don't let them take advantage of you. Don't you go and just get caught up in the loneliness of the moment and just, end up just blowing all your money on this individual that you think you're in a relationship with, but you're not. You're just one of their customers. You're probably going to hear about a lot of barracks parties. A lot of parties in the Army can be had, barracks parties, off-post parties, going to the club, whatever the thing is, right? Especially, that may be a lifestyle you want to, experience because you've spent, a lot of time being in high school and living with your family, and now you're free to engage in these cool parties you heard about. But the thing you got to be cautious of is that sometimes people take it too far, and they go for too long or too often, and they develop a drinking problem. It's a pretty common thing. Well, I don't know how common, but you'll hear about a lot of soldiers that probably have drinking problems. I don't know if it's, more than 50%, less than 50%. I don't know what the statistics are, but you got to watch out for that, because if you're getting too heavily with the drinking, it can cause more problems, because now maybe you have a drinking problem. Maybe that causes you getting trouble. Maybe you're getting DUIs. Maybe you could get, in fights and whatever kind of a thing. I mean, I'm not saying don't have parties, right? They're fun and they make some great memories. But you got to kind of look at how often are you doing this? How often are you drinking? Are you drinking every day? Are you having these crazy wild parties every weekend? And maybe if that's the case, that's probably a little excessive, right? Having a party here and there and having a drink here and there is probably fine, being responsible and having a good time. But if that becomes your primary goal for the weekend, or your primary extra activity is to go drinking and have parties, then that's where you start kind of walking that line of maybe you're developing a drinking problem. Maybe you've become an alcoholic, right? And you got to watch out for that. There are soldiers that definitely kind of fall into that rut because it's fun, because it's different from what they're used to. They're having a good time, and then it causes problems later on down the road because now you've become an alcoholic. So if you're going to drink responsibly. If you're going to drive, don't drink. If you're going to drink, don't drive, right? That's the whole thing we always do, every Friday for safety briefings. So you got to do it in the responsible way. Have fun, but have some responsible fun. Be responsible with your fun. Well, you know what I mean. Now, one last one that I'll kind of bring up, and that's spending too much money, right? Again, you're in that situation where, you're not used to having this kind of money, right? It's not a lot, probably, especially if you're new to the Army, but it's probably more than you were probably making working at McDonald's when you were in high school part-time, but who knows, right? And with that, you now see that I got a little bit more money in my bank account than I had before, and I see all the other soldiers in the barracks that have cool stuff, and I want cool stuff. So you go buy a PlayStation, Xbox, big screen TV, laptop, all sorts of things, all these new clothes and everything like that, and you find yourself in debt. You find yourself living from paycheck to paycheck and struggling a little bit. So you got to watch yourself, especially you may be in a situation where you're a private, you're E1, E2, and some of your friends are E4s, and you see them buying these cool stuff because of course they're making a little bit better money, right? They're making a little bit more, and then maybe they can afford it, maybe they can't, and they're getting crazy with it. But nonetheless, you're like, hey, I want to keep up with these people, my friends, right? They have cool stuff, I want cool stuff. And you end up kind of overspending, right? Maybe you get into credit card debt. Maybe you're just in a situation where you're just draining your bank account. Maybe you don't have any credit cards, but you're using your debit card, and you're, checking your balance in your bank account, and you're like, oh man, I only got $10 left, or I'm negative something, or whatever, right? And that's one of the things you got to watch out for is you got to understand, what your limits are. Set some kind of budget, right? I understand you want to have the cool stuff, but maybe you can't have it all right away, right? Maybe you have to kind of stagger it out a little bit. Be like, hey, okay, I'm going to save up, and then I can get myself that TV. The next thing I'm going to save up for is that PlayStation. Next thing I'm going to save up for is this, that, whatever, and just kind of budget it out, right? You may not get all the cool stuff right away on day one of living in the barracks. You have to kind of wait a little bit and earn that stuff, essentially. But you know, if you get into that habit where you're like, I'm going to charge it to my military star card, right? Which is the credit card you can get in the Army, and it's pretty easy to get approved for one. But if you get carried away, you end up in debt on that thing, and you got to watch out for that. So you got to really set boundaries, right? As far as my budget is this, I can afford to do this, and then after that, the next goal is to do this, and here's the budget I got to save up for to achieve that, right? And don't just rush into it and just try to get it all right away, right? Now, I'm sure there's plenty of other mistakes that you can possibly make. And I want to hear from some of the soldiers out there that are watching this video that are in the Army, maybe some veterans out there. What are some things to avoid that you see? Things you see soldiers, you know, getting themselves into, and it causes problems, it causes hassles, headaches, whatever. I want to hear about it down in the comment section down below. And of course, if you got a question about some things, I'll do my best to try to answer your questions. So help out the YouTube algorithm and make sure you're leaving some comment. A new thing I'm also going to try is maybe a little quiz, a little test for you to take. So if you want to take part in that little quiz, I'll have a link for it down in the description box down below. Test your skills, see how much you kind of learned from this video, or just in general for the related quiz to this video that takes you over to ChristopherChaos.com, my website, of course. Take the quiz. Let's see how you do. Let me know in the comment section maybe how well you did. I appreciate you hanging out and watching this video. If you want to support the channel even more, you can go check out my merch. There's a link to my website down in the description box down below to get yourself some Chaos shirts or Army-related shirts, or you can become a member of Chaos Elite, all sorts of things. But definitely make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're hitting that thumbs up, and make sure you're leaving a comment just to help out the YouTube algorithm to recommend it to others. Maybe share the video. I don't know. Thank you, though, for hanging out and watching this video. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.